Welcome to the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast, where wealth meets legacy. Join your host, Tim Fergestad, as we explore the journeys of Phoenix's finest to success and beyond.
Hello, this is Tim Fergestad. Thank you for joining us. I'm very pleased to have Andrew Kolikoff with me here today. Andrew is a master of masters in creating profits for organizations by elevating people and company cultures to become the very best they can be, more productive, engaged, and more servant-hearted. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I need to let you know ahead of time that you're running this from home. I'm also home and I have dogs and sometimes they bark. So audience, I'm sorry. My dogs may bark. Just be prepared.
All right. Yeah, a trigger warning for people who are afraid of.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And we'll also talk a little bit about your local group you've created, the Secret Sauce Society, later as well.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Awesome.
Something I'm very proud of.
Yeah, it sounds great. I look forward to learning more about it. As we start, why don't you give us a snapshot of your services now and why you're well suited for it? How you got there?
Well, let's start with the latter first.
Okay.
How I got there. So I'm going to start in a place, Tim, that you may be like, why is he telling me this? But trust me,
all right, everybody hang on.
It'll all come together. So I grew up in this remarkable home. If there was a Shangri-La on earth, I was in it. My parents were madly in love, openly affectionate. My grandparents the same. They came over every day. My brother and I were the center of the universe. But more than that, my parents lived their lives in service, and it wasn't connected to an organized religion or faith. It was just who they were. And my home was Grand Central Station every single day for somebody that needed a meal, a place to stay. It was the place of joy, love, laughter, and safety for the world. It was the hub. My friends, parents' friends hung out there, people in need. And I thought all this was normal. I didn't know. And it wasn't till I was ejected from the bubble, went away to college, that I learned two things very quickly. One, the world was not exactly what I thought it was. And two, that my parents were heroes and I did not know.
Right.
That realization got me to do was it made me really decide who I wanted to be in this life, in this world. And most people don't know the answer to that. If you ask somebody who they are, they have to think it out and give you words in the moment because they're not clear.
Right.
And that is the most essential thing to be clear on.
Right.
Who are you? What is your purpose? Why do you get out of bed? Right. And it has to apply to everything, not just your family or your work. And you don't create two. What is your purpose?
Right. That's something I've been dealing with myself lately with my oldest just left the nest type of thing, and trying to make sure they have the values and they may or may not be self-actualized yet, but they have some idea of who they are and what they want, so they know how to navigate the world and deal with things as they come.
And it goes deeper than what you want. It goes deeper to your purpose. And I think when you're young, we're in a society where we're supposed to go to college or get a job, but there's no program that helps you align yourself with yourself. So I realized I had a choice to make. My dad was also a dentist, that I could have either A, been entitled, or B, pay it forward. So I decided that I also wanted to live my life in service, and that my purpose was to take that level of service, not just from my family and friends, but also to my community and to the workplace. And I wanted to inject this idea of what my parents instilled in me in the home into the workplace. So I developed I was young. I couldn't replicate what my parents did. I didn't have a home. I couldn't invite people over, like my mom did. So I decided I was going to do two things every day on average to keep myself accountable to this person I was going to be. And one of them was every day on average, I had for 30 years a coffee, breakfast, lunch, or Zoom with somebody who I'd not met or would like to, or I was introduced to or reintroduced to. And number two, not to show up with a transactional mindset. Everybody that does a coffee, everybody that goes to a business event, everybody that goes everywhere has almost that radio station in their head, WIIFM, what's in it for me? Mm-hmm. And I learned in that house that no, you leave your transactional mindset at the door and you show up just to serve. And if you can do that, not only do you form a much more authentic, genuine, longer lasting relationship, but it's usually one that's more fruitful because you've touched their lives. And so what I did was a coffee, breakfast, lunch, or Zoom a day. And I showed up to serve, which you wind up asking different questions, very
right.
Much more personal kind of questions, because when you find out what people really, really care about, you know how to touch their life in a way that's more meaningful to them.
Right.
So I also averaged with that 5 new door openings, 5 introductions a day, every day for 30 years. And what came back would take us many, many podcast episodes, Tim.
I'm sure.
I wound up becoming a 40 under 40 in New York, which is kind of a big deal, top 40 business leaders under 40. Yep. Not because of what I did, but because of who I was, because I was touching all these people's lives. And when you do, the natural reaction is, well, what can I do for you? And I'm like, well, that's not why I showed up. And they're like, well, let me at least introduce you to this person. So next thing, you start getting introduced to more higher level in the business community people. And then if you touch their lives, what that turned into, even though I was a chief science officer for an international company based in New York City, I wound up becoming the top producer. And I wound up becoming the top producer anywhere I went without ever selling a thing. And people are like, well, wait a minute. How can you become the top producer and not sell a thing? And I'm like, when you're touching people's lives, there's nothing to sell, nothing. And that's all I ever did. And still to this day, all I ever do. And as a result, by knowing who I am, knowing what my purpose is, and then later in life, aligning that with what I do, not only do I have so much more happiness and fulfillment, but I'm very fortunate because ultimately everybody wants what I call the 2 Ps. People just say, well, just follow your passion. And I always say that's not good enough, because my passion at one point was to be a baseball player, right? Well, I wasn't good enough. Even though it was my passion, I was never going to be a professional baseball player. So following your passion's not enough. You also have to have the second P, which is proclivity. You got to be good at it, right? Okay. You got to have the 2 Ps. And for me, it was my passion was my purpose, that I wanted to make workplaces like the home I grew up in, that were incredibly close. People ask me, Andrew, what is it that makes a culture truly great? And if you ask an HR person, they'll give you more mechanical answers. Well, you have to have the right policies in place, and you need to have maybe a ping pong table and some work flexibility. And while that's true, the best answer is, what makes a culture truly great is when people feel safe to communicate what isn't safe.
Right.
And you've got to create an environment for them to feel safe. And so I wanted to take what I had in that home into the workplace. And over the years, not only did I do that in a job that I had, but I did it in a company that I owned. And now I do it as a consultant. And now I created an organization in Phoenix for servant-hearted leaders. So sorry for the long answer, but it really tells my story.
Yeah, for sure. That was well done. Thank you, Andrew. That's a lot of gold there. And it reminds me a little bit of Zig Ziglar's quote. I think it's Zig. You can get what you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want.
Look, we
kind
all
of a byproduct
know
naturally.
that, I mean, this may sound spiritual or woo-woo, but there is a law of thermodynamics. That's not woo. When the law of thermodynamics says for every force placed on an object, there's an equal opposite force in the opposite direction. Well, the universe works that way too. For everything you put out, you will get probably, a response back.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, this is something that I have been shouting on the rooftops for years about people. Something I always say is that 90% of all leaders are actually they're not leaders. They're just people in positions of authority. And leadership is not the exercise of authority. Leadership is the exercise of influence. And too many people are put into managerial and leadership roles that don't really understand the power of influence.
Yeah. Often they're a good maker and they're promoted into leadership without the understanding or the emotional intelligence to.
And like I told you before we jumped online, people don't quit their jobs, they quit their managers.
Right.
And managers may get there because they were producing reliable, consistent outcomes, but they don't necessarily know how to manage feelings, especially when shit hits the fan.
Right.
And they need help for that and coaching for that. And so many companies experience churn and not the culture they want. And they don't realize that it's a lot at that level that is where the coaching and the help needs to go. Because I mean, we all know, I mean, anybody can go look it up on LinkedIn, but companies with the best cultures are notoriously the most profitable, have the lowest churn, have the most productive, employees, innovation, profitability. But very few companies actually invest in their culture, which is a great conundrum because everybody knows this, but very few people invest. They'll invest in everything else, but they won't literally throw money at their culture other than maybe a ping pong table.
Right. So you're saying they don't know how. They know it's important, but they don't have the systems in place. Kind of like everybody knows how to have six-pack abs, but they just don't know how to implement it.
I would say yes, and.
Okay.
The and is when they do know how, they still won't throw money at it. Most still will not. Now, large companies absolutely do. They throw a lot of money at culture.
Okay.
Medium to small companies typically, historically, don't. And it's because, when you're a small business, you've got so many fires to put out that they can't seem to, but if they started out that way by building a culture where they were truly in alignment, they would have less fires to put out.
Right.
When you think about it, Tim, when a major league team or in any professional sport fires a coach, and then the new coach comes in and he comes to the podium for media day, what's the first thing every time, 100% of the time, a coach says? They don't say, oh, I'm going to draw up better X's and O's. No, what they say is, we're going to build a better culture here.
Okay.
That's what they say, because that is the most important thing in building an organization. And that's what I'm dedicated to. And that's honestly, the best cultures come from people who are more servant-hearted leaders, something I call conscious leaders. And I've become a thought leader in that space, do a lot of public speaking, and a lot of my work, consulting work, is in that space.
Okay. Do you think that this is sort of cyclical, or maybe sort of a pendulum swings back and forth? Sometimes there's different eras in the modern industrial age where companies get more sensitive to their team's needs, and then they go away from it, and it swings back and forth. Or do you think it's more of just the change of information and technology, where like 60, 50 years ago it was authoritative, it was top down, the guys at the top had the information and they would tell people what to do, but now the guys in the front lines have better information, and the leaders are actually just trying to empower them and support them?
So that's a really good question. And my answer is yes, there's some of that. But I really think there's a real shift happening. Because if you think about it, Tim, I mean, I'm a little older than you. My son's 26. Your kids are going to go into the workplace very differently than we did. When I went in, you looked for a good job with good pay. That's what I looked for, right? Today, most of the young generation not only want a good job with good pay, but they want a good place. They want
something with meaning, right?
Right, and some culture. And I'm not making this up. You can go look it up online. So I don't think that's a fad. I mean, this is an entire generational shift in and most companies, sizable ones, are run by older people like me that are still living, the old way. And those that are not adapting, a lot of the adapting that's occurring now is technology, AI. But unfortunately, it's not as much culture as the demand is asking for. Younger people are taking less money, my son included. He's taking less money because he's working for a place that matches his beliefs and an environment he wants to be in and work in.
Right. So maybe another angle of that is belonging, right? Being aligned with values in your congruence between your beliefs and how you spend your day.
Well, here's part of brings us back to the beginning of the conversation. Most people kids, they don't know their purpose. Never mind kids, adults. I do a lot of speaking. I ask, who are you? And they, nobody knows. And, another question I ask when I speak is, in your role here at Company X, what is your single greatest responsibility? And wouldn't you know it, Tim, I have never once been given the right answer, but once I give it, everybody agrees. And I mean, top level CEOs agree, and they don't get it right. And everybody thinks if you're in technology, your single greatest responsibility is something related to technology. If it's operations, it's that. If it's finance, it's that. But everybody's single greatest responsibility is their behavior, how they're behaving in creating results. Something I always say, the real truth, Tim, is that there's two bottom lines, and nobody can argue this. There's the bottom line, and the other is how you get there, how you're behaving in getting there. If you're not playing nicely with others, even though you're producing results, you're not helping others to perform at their best. How we get there is just as important as getting there. They say that life is not about the destination, it's about the journey. But somehow we've created this false narrative that business is the opposite. It's only about results and not the journey. And I call the bullshit flag. No, it's about the journey and how you get there, because that's the culture. That's the environment. That's how you behave. That's what you do when shit hits the fan, right? And shit always hits the fan at work. Always. How you behave is your single greatest responsibility.
Okay. So you were a chief technical officer, and then you I think you said you ran your own company or companies.
I invented a product. I ran and I built a pretty large company that we got licensing from the NFL, baseball, basketball, and hockey. Built an incredible culture there.
Okay.
Even before, when I was chief science officer. And then after that, I moved out to Phoenix, and I've been a consultant ever since for 19 years, and speaker. And
so that's full-time now is been your focus or passion or mission is to help other companies.
For 20 years, yes, in leadership development, organizational and individual behavioral change management. Something it's a known fact that 86% of all strategy fails or is only partially implemented. And the reason is the people in the strategy making business aren't in the human mindset and organizational behavioral change business to make the strategy work.
Okay.
And I also created an organization here in Phoenix called the Secret Sauce Society for leaders that care, leaders that want to build a better culture, leaders that want alignment and purpose in their lives and their work. And it's created this big movement. We have events every month. I run mastermind groups, peer advisory groups for these leaders. There's members. So it's not just who I am, where I came from, my purpose. It's also what I do.
Right.
And so my whole life now, Tim, is in alignment. And, I love the name of your podcast. It's called the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast. I have so much fulfillment and prosperity in my life because I am in alignment. I have my cake and eat it too. I do what I love, and I love what I do.
Awesome, Andrew. So in that role that you have now, what are some of the biggest hurdles for helping companies get this done? And is the Secret Sauce Society part of overcoming those hurdles?
Secret Sauce absolutely helps people. It's really more focused on professional service providers and consultants, small micro businesses that don't really know how to get clients, and never mind know how to align themselves with themselves and with their business and get the right kind of clients. So yes, we help them with that. But your question again is that pretty much what I'm doing now? Or how?
Well, no, the hurdles, right? To
so the main hurdles for most companies, usually how it works is I'll get a call, a referral for me to coach someone, which then turns into coaching a couple people, which then turns into, well, maybe you can help us with our culture overall. Most small businesses don't want to sign up for the full meal deal.
Right.
They don't want to throw money at culture. They'll throw money at solving a problem or a conflict, or they see the potential in somebody, but they're not reaching it, and maybe they could use a little help. So that's how I'm getting most of my gigs. But once I'm in there, one of the biggest things that we do right off the bat is I'll sit down with the leader and make sure that the values of the company match the personal values. And how do you know? Like, what's your purpose? What's your story? Tell me, because then it will be authentic in the values. And then this is the big thing. Most companies that have stated values, it's just words on a wall, man.
Right.
Very few people in the company know what they are, never mind live them.
Know how to implement them. And
what I do is I operationalize them. And people are like, well, what does that mean? How do you operationalize values? So let's pretend I get your people in a room and we say, okay, let's say one of the values is go the extra mile. We're going to go the extra mile for our people, our vendors, and our clients. And I ask everybody in the company, give me examples of how you went the extra mile. Actual examples. And let's say I got 77 examples of that value. Well, next time it's come to their annual review, not only do you review them on performance, but review them on how many of the 77 they hit of that one value, right? So, and if you reward them based on the actual values, that you actually gave them examples of each value. They gave you examples of each value. Give me an example. How did you go the extra mile, and you get all these examples and you reward them on that. How much do you think they're going to remember the values and try to live out the values?
Sure. And I think you make a great point there also is it's not like a pay bonus. You're reinforcing their intrinsic motivation with their values, behavior, right? And yes,
right? Yes. You're rewarding behavior, not just outcome.
Right.
The two bottom lines. If you reward both bottom lines, behavior and outcomes, then people will live out your values and the culture will get better.
Right. Good stuff. So how often do you run into people that want your solution, but they don't want to do the work type of thing? I run into this. I have people who are like, oh, Tim, help me with this, help me with that. And I'm like, okay. And you reach a hand down, but they won't reach up, right? And you want to help them. You can see the solution, but you can't drag them to it. You know what I mean? How often do you run into that scenario where people...
So I get people that are interested often, but very often they want me to sell them. They're like, well, tell me why I need you. Okay. And when they say that, I'm like, tell me why I should hire you. And if they say that, I say, don't. Because I don't want people, like Simon Sinek said, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. If they believe what you believe, there's nothing to sell.
Right.
So that to me is not going to be a client that, they're already skeptical. They don't believe. They're not going to see my value.
You have to flip it and ask them, no, tell me why I'm here.
Right. So what's your pain point? I usually get people that have read my stuff, have heard me speak, have been referred by someone that has experienced my work and is like, oh my God, that's exactly who I've got it down to a specific niche. So, but even still, most don't want the full meal deal. They're like, they want to just dip their toe in the water because it's not like hiring an accountant. Everybody needs an accountant. People think they don't need this, but it's actually far from the truth. And I've written a lot about it in my newsletter in LinkedIn, that actually everybody needs help. Everybody. That was one of the things I had to learn in becoming a leader, was to know to ask for help.
Right. And
to know that, if every great athlete, every great leader has been coached, every single one, or has many coaches.
Right.
Why don't you? And I'm not saying that there's something wrong with you. I'm saying we all have our own realities, but it's just
blind spots
and blind spots in all of it. We all can be better. And if, here's the best way to say it, Tim. And I'm going to point to you, but I really mean everybody. Your business, your career will only ever be about as good as you are. And about as good as you are, it's about as good as it's ever going to get. Yet everything society will tell you is that it's actually about it and not you. You need money for it, people for it, technology for it,
right,
education for it, training for it. The list is endless in what you need for it. But the happiest, most successful people you will ever meet work on themselves almost as much as they work on it.
Right.
And that is an absolute fact.
So, big picture again. I mean, in terms of your legacy, helping companies and stuff, but is the Secret Sauce Society a big part of that?
Secret Sauce Society doesn't do any consulting. It's an organization with memberships, sponsorships, peer advisory groups, events, for people that believe in all this that I'm espousing, and they want to be better, and they want their companies to be better. So it's created a movement for people that are more servant-hearted, that actually care, that want happiness and alignment in their life and work. And you might be surprised how much of a big of a movement it is. I mean, my last event, main event, I had 250 people.
Wow.
I have 2 mastermind groups. I have banks as sponsors. I have the 8th largest accounting firm in America, Clifton Larson Allen, is a sponsor. I have national law firms as sponsors because they believe what I believe.
Right. That's very impactful, Andrew. You have, I mean, that's not just, I mean, locally, but I mean, this all trickles down, right? To all these companies, to all the employees, to all those people for their own.
It does. And here's the best part. This is where things are trending. Ask the young people what they want, where they want to be. This is not just good business. It's good business timing.
Right. As we wrap up the interview here, Andrew, do you have any initiatives or exciting plans for the rest of 2025 or the coming year?
Nothing really, other than I'm kind of like a missionary, espousing this, that life can be better if we do the inner work, not just the outer work, and then we align the two.
Right.
And it's something we all should do in our lives. And, the Secret Sauce Society is something I'm so very proud of. I do a lot of public speaking. I've had some pretty incredible keynote gigs at Northrop Grumman and other companies. And I'm always looking for more speaking opportunities. It's something that God has gifted me with. And trust me, Tim, I suck at a lot of things, but that's not one of them. And no, every day I wake up, I know my purpose. I serve. I help at least one person every day. And the organization helps so many people. And you know what? That's enough for me. Excellent.
We can check off today's box with this call. You helped me. Thank you. Well, isn't it nostra ipsum? It's like a Greek maxim, right? Know thyself, right? And as you say, so many people are out of touch when they don't know what they want, don't know who they are.
Just try it. Ask people, who are you? And you will see 99.999% of people you'll see their eyes go up and they're thinking and they're just giving it to you on the fly. They don't have clarity, and clarity is what makes you dangerous in this life, in the best way.
Right.
And nobody has clarity. When you take on a job or a directive, you start with the end in mind, you work your way backwards, and you develop a plan. People aren't doing that for themselves.
Right. They get into routines and just they're reactive
and they're doing work, but there's no purpose. There's no alignment. And when you look, at the end of the day, everybody wants to be happy. That's the number one thing. I just want to be happy. Well, guess what? Here is the formula for happiness. Align yourself with yourself, and then align yourself with everything outside yourself, your work.
Right.
And if you do that, prosperity, which I love that the name of your podcast, happiness and prosperity will have a way of finding you.
Right. One of the definitions I've heard of happiness is making meaningful progress or making progress towards a meaningful pursuit.
Meaningful purpose, right?
Right.
Exactly. And most people don't do that work.
It's not a destination. It's just
you're always working on a journey. And that's the value of what I bring to who I coach, to organizations I represent, to those that I speak to. I help make them think. So I'll end on this, because I'm always looking. If you ask how, what help do I need? I'm always looking for speaking gigs. And I think what makes me stand out as a speaker is this: 90+% of speakers speak to inform. I do not. Well, I do a little bit. The main focus of my speaking is to make people think, and make them think so much that you will even challenge some of your own beliefs. And that's something we all should be doing on a regular basis.
Right. That's actually something that I was just recently explaining to my kids who it's a common thing nowadays. Everybody wants to just prove their ideas right instead of be proven wrong, which is some of the best thinkers in history always talked about how they loved being proved wrong, because that's how you learn and grow. Right? If everyone just is in an echo chamber telling you what you already know, you don't learn or grow.
100%. And we all need to do this work. We all deserve to have that happiness and alignment. And most everyone needs help in helping create that for themselves.
Right.
People can find out about me, because I know you're going to ask. If you just go type in my name in LinkedIn.
Andrew Kolikoff.
Kolikoff. I have a robust LinkedIn page. I have a newsletter called The Conscious Leader. I have 30,000 connections in LinkedIn. I've maxed out, so I always got to let go of some to add. But I have
all the herd.
Thousands of followers of my newsletter, and my newsletter does exactly that. They're written to make you think.
Excellent. All right. Well, good stuff. Great ending there, Andrew. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. Thank you again, Andrew. We appreciate you sharing your story and insights and making everybody think.
Thank you, Tim, for what you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you.
Inspired by our guests? Visit phoenixprosperitypodcast.com/guest and join us on the show and share your success story with Tim. The spotlight awaits.